The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not the temperature, the energy. Like all the air had been sucked out and replaced with judgment. The ceiling lights buzzed faintly overhead, casting a clinical glow on everything below. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands clasped in my lap, trying not to fidget, trying not to show the storm unraveling inside me. Across the room, Damien stood tall in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than 2 months of my rent. He didn't look at me. Not once. Just straight ahead, like I was some obstacle he was already confident he'd removed. His lawyer whispered something in his ear, and Damien gave a smug nod. Then the judge cleared his throat and looked directly at Damien. "Mr. Carter, you've requested full custody. Please explain your reasoning to the court." That's when he said it. "Your Honor," Damien began, voice smooth, steady, practiced. "My son, Zane, told me he doesn't feel safe living with his mother. He's asked to live with me instead." It felt like the floor vanished beneath me. I stopped breathing. My ears rang. The words echoed louder than they were spoken. "He doesn't feel safe? Safe with me?" I looked at Zane sitting 2 feet away, his legs barely touching the floor, his small hands balled into fists in his lap. He didn't flinch, but he didn't meet my eyes either. I wanted to scream, to stand and shout that it was a lie, that Zane had never said such a thing, that he fell asleep in my arms every night and kissed my cheek every morning before school. But I couldn't move. My throat had closed. My entire body had turned to stone. The judge turned toward Zane and softened his tone. "Zane, do you agree with what your father just said? Do you want to live with him full time?" Silence. 1,000 thoughts crashed inside me. He's 8. He shouldn't have to answer that. This isn't fair. He's just a child. Then, slowly, Zane stood up. My heart stopped. He reached into the pocket of the gray blazer my mom had ironed for him the night before and pulled something out. It was my old phone, the one he used to play music and games, the one I'd nearly thrown away. He stepped forward, holding it out. "May I play something?" he asked, his voice soft but unwavering. The judge raised his eyebrows. "Play something?" Zane nodded. "From last night, I recorded it." For a moment, no one moved. Even Damien turned fully toward him, eyes narrowing. The judge leaned forward. "Is this something you think the court should hear?" Zane looked directly at him. "Yes, sir." My breath caught in my chest. I had no idea what was on that phone, no idea what my son had recorded. But in that second, I knew something had happened, and somehow my child, my baby, had decided to speak for himself, to protect both of us. He handed the phone to the bailiff, who brought it to the judge. Everyone in that courtroom was holding their breath. Even Damien's smirk faltered. And just before the judge pressed play, Zane looked right at his father and said, "I didn't lie. You did." The room went still, and I knew nothing after today would ever be the same. People always ask me what he was like in the beginning, and I never know how to answer without lying or breaking down. Because the truth is, he was incredible. At first. We met when I was 22, working part-time at a bookstore, and dreaming of opening my own coffee shop one day. Damien walked in wearing confidence like a tailored jacket. He had that kind of laugh that made you feel lucky just to hear it. He flirted like it was an art form, and when he looked at you, you felt seen. Really seen. He told me I was different, that I had fire, that I made him feel calm, grounded. It was everything I thought love should sound like. So I fell, fast and hard. He proposed after 6 months. We got married in a courthouse on a Thursday afternoon with rain tapping the windows. It felt romantic, like we were writing our own rules. But looking back, I realize now that I stopped writing them the moment I said I do. The shift didn't come all at once. It came in whispers, in sideways glances, in little comments that seemed harmless until they weren't. "Do you really think she's a good influence?" "I just don't like when other men text you." "You should be home when I get back." That's not asking too much, right? At first, I thought he was just protective. I mistook control for care. And when I got pregnant with Zane, I thought things would soften. That being a father would settle something wild in him. I was wrong. Instead, everything tightened. I wasn't allowed to go back to work. "It's better for the baby if you stay home." He installed a tracking app on my phone. He told me it was for safety. I wasn't allowed to drive without asking first. He cut up my debit card. Said budgeting was easier that way. I told myself it was temporary, that he was just stressed, that if I did everything right, he'd go back to being the man I married. But no matter what I did, it was never right. One afternoon, when Zane was 5, he spilled a glass of orange juice on the carpet. Just juice. But the way Damien reacted, you'd have thought the kid set the house on fire. He stormed into the room, shouting, "You're so damn clumsy, look what you've done." Zane backed into the wall, tears forming fast. "Damien, stop," I said, stepping between them. He turned that rage toward me, eyes dark and wild. "This is your fault. He's like this because of you." That was the moment. I saw Zane's tiny hands trembling, his lip quivering. And in that moment, I wasn't scared for myself. I was terrified for him, for what he might start to believe about himself if we stayed. That night, while Damien slept, I packed a single backpack. I woke Zane gently, wrapped him in a hoodie, and we walked out the door with no plan but one: never go back. We stayed at my mother's for 2 weeks. I got a part-time job at the library and found a 1-bedroom apartment with water stains on the ceiling and floors that creaked. But it was ours. It wasn't easy. I was exhausted all the time, but I could breathe. I could think. Zane started smiling more, and for the first time in years, I started remembering who I used to be. I thought we were finally safe. Until 6 months ago, when Damien showed up with that polished smile, a lawyer at his side, and a custody petition in his hand. It started with small things, little silences where there used to be noise. Zane had always been a chatterbox, the kind of kid who narrated everything from brushing his teeth to tying his shoes. But after his weekend visits with Damien, the words began to fade. He'd come home, drop his backpack by the door, and walk straight to his room. No "hi, Mom," no stories, just quiet. At first, I thought maybe he was just tired. I mean, joint custody isn't easy on anyone, especially not a kid. But then it happened again, and again. The pattern wasn't random. Every time he returned from his father's house, it was like someone had turned down the volume on my son. One night, I peeked into his room and saw him lying on his bed, staring up at the ceiling with his favorite stuffed animal tucked tightly under his arm. I sat on the edge of the bed and asked gently, "Was it a rough weekend?" He didn't answer. Instead, after a long pause, he whispered, "Mom, what if someone lies and people believe them?" The question hit me like a slap. I felt my breath catch, my throat tighten. I tried to keep my voice even. "Then we tell the truth," I said, brushing his hair back. "Even if it's hard. Especially then." He nodded, but I could tell he wasn't really comforted. That night, I barely slept. The next weekend, before he left with Damien, he asked if he could take the old phone I'd given him, the one with the cracked screen and battery that barely held a charge. I almost laughed. "Sure," I said. "Still works?" He shrugged. "I just want to listen to music." It seemed harmless, a normal request. But when he got home Sunday night, something was different. He didn't even take off his shoes, just sat on the couch, quietly tapping through that phone like it was made of glass. I watched him from the kitchen, a dish towel in one hand, heart sinking. "Everything okay?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, just tired." But it wasn't just tired. His voice was too flat, his eyes too far away. Something had happened. I could feel it in my bones, the kind of mother sense you don't need evidence for. Later that week, I saw him slip the phone into his jacket pocket before school. I started to ask why, but stopped myself. Something in his face told me not to pry. Not yet. 2 nights before the hearing, I tucked him into bed and lingered longer than usual. The room was dim, warm, safe, the total opposite of whatever he'd been walking into every other weekend. "Are you nervous?" I asked, keeping my tone soft. "A little," he admitted, "but I think I know what I have to do." I didn't understand what he meant. Not then. I kissed his forehead, turned off the light, and left the room. If I'd known what he was preparing for, what he had been silently planning all along, I would have stayed. I would have told him how proud I already was. But I didn't get the chance. Because my son, my quiet, gentle, careful little boy, was about to do something braver than I ever could have imagined. And the next time we stepped into that courtroom, he wasn't carrying just a phone. He was carrying the truth. The courtroom had never felt so still. The judge had just asked Zane the question, the one I had been dreading for weeks. Do you want to live with your father? Every muscle in my body tensed. My palms were already damp, clenched into fists beneath the table. I didn't dare look at Zane. I didn't want to influence his answer. But I could feel his small presence beside me, quiet but brimming with something I hadn't yet understood. Then he stood. I heard the soft rustle of his jacket as he reached into the inside pocket. His little fingers pulled out the old phone, the same one I'd nearly thrown away months ago. He stepped forward, holding it in both hands like it was something sacred. "May I play a recording?" he asked. His voice was soft, clear, unshaken. The judge leaned forward slightly, brows raised. "A recording?" Zane nodded. "From last night. It's important." Even Damien looked caught off guard. He shifted in his seat, clearly thrown off script. His lawyer leaned in, but said nothing. "Bring it here," the judge said gently. Zane walked across the courtroom, each step echoing on the polished tile like a drumbeat. His sneakers made a faint squeak, but the room remained deathly quiet. No whispers, no murmurs, just the heavy tension of something about to crack open. He handed the phone to the bailiff, who brought it to the judge's bench. The judge took the phone, adjusted his glasses, and tapped play. At first, there was only static, a soft hum. Then a voice, sharp, unmistakable. "Damien, if you don't say you want to live with me," his voice hissed through the speaker, "I swear I'll make sure your mother disappears. You understand me?" A collective gasp rose from the gallery. I felt my heart stop, like my body had gone numb. Then came Zane's voice, smaller, scared, but still steady. "But I want to stay with Mommy." And Damien's response, colder than I'd ever heard it. "That's not your choice. You're just a kid. Say what I told you, or things are going to get worse for her." The air in the room shifted. People sat up straighter. Some leaned forward. Damien's lawyer looked like he'd been slapped. Damien himself went pale. I turned slowly to look at him. His expression, once smug, was blank now, like he couldn't believe his own voice had betrayed him. The judge didn't speak for a long moment. He just stared at the phone, then back at Damien. Then he played the recording again. Word for word, every syllable, every threat. When it ended, the judge removed his glasses and placed them gently on the bench. "Mr. Carter, is that your voice?" Damien opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Then, barely audible, he muttered, "It sounds like it." The judge leaned forward. "Did you threaten your son last night?" Before Damien could answer, the judge held up a hand. "You will not speak unless I ask you to." He turned to me. "Miss Ray, has your son ever mentioned being afraid of his father before?" I swallowed hard and nodded. "Yes, he's asked if the truth matters. He's been afraid after visits. He couldn't sleep." Zane sat back down beside me, his eyes still downcast, but I could feel the shift in him. He had done it. He had spoken the truth, not with anger, but with courage. And for the first time in years, I wasn't the only one who saw what Damien really was. The judge glanced down at the phone again. "I need a moment to review this," he said. "Court is in recess for 15 minutes. The gavel hit the wood. But in every way that mattered, the verdict had already begun to form. The judge returned to the bench 15 minutes later, but to me, it felt like a lifetime had passed. I hadn't moved from my seat. My hands were still clutching Zane's, fingers intertwined tightly as if letting go might make everything unravel. He leaned against me, quiet but calm. The fear he'd walked in with had melted into something else, something solid. My son had faced the monster, and now we were both waiting to see if the room had truly seen it too. Judge Callahan adjusted his chair, cleared his throat, and looked out across the courtroom with a gravity that made everyone sit up straighter. "I have listened to the recording more than once," he began, eyes sweeping slowly across the room, finally landing on Damien. "And I find no ambiguity in its content or in its tone. Mr. Carter, your voice, your words, and your intent were clear." Damien shifted uncomfortably in his chair. For the first time in the entire hearing, he looked like the walls were closing in. His lawyer sat beside him, pale and still. "You threatened a child," the judge continued, "to manipulate the outcome of this custody case. You used intimidation and fear to try to coerce your son into lying under oath. That is a direct violation not only of this court's ethical expectations, but of basic human decency." I couldn't breathe. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, but I held them back. I needed to hear every word. "Effective immediately," the judge said. "All visitation rights for Mr. Carter are suspended pending further review. He will be required to undergo a full psychological evaluation and complete a court-approved parenting education program before any form of supervised visitation will be considered." A stunned silence filled the room. I felt my chest rise, finally, with the breath I'd been holding in for months. Years, maybe. I didn't have to fight anymore. I didn't have to explain or defend myself or prove that my home was safe, that my love for Zane was enough. My son had told the truth, and this time someone with power had listened. Judge Callahan turned to me. "Miss Ray," he said, voice softer now, "you've demonstrated a clear commitment to providing a stable and supportive environment for your son. I find no grounds to alter the current custody arrangement. Full legal and physical custody remains with the mother." I couldn't speak. I just nodded. Zane looked up at me with eyes wide and shining. I squeezed his hand and whispered, "We did it." The judge leaned slightly toward Zane. "Young man," he said, "what you did today took extraordinary courage. Not many adults would have had the strength to speak up the way you did." Zane didn't answer. He just gave a tiny nod. But I saw it. The way his shoulders relaxed, the way he leaned into me just a little more. He felt safe again. The gavel came down. Court is adjourned. Chairs scraped. People stood. Papers rustled. But I sat still, frozen in the moment, trying to let it all sink in. Evelyn reached us first, her arms wrapping around both me and Zane in a fierce, quiet hug. I looked over at Damien one last time. He wasn't smirking anymore. His eyes were empty, his jaw clenched, hands folded tightly as his lawyer whispered with urgency beside him. He had lost, but more importantly, we had won. Not just the case, but the right to move forward. And just when I thought that was the end of it, Zane tugged gently at my sleeve and whispered something that would change everything again. It's strange, the quiet that comes after a storm. That night, after the courthouse emptied and the world tilted just slightly back into place, we went home. Not to anything grand, just our little apartment with the creaky floors and the faded rug and the hallway light that flickers no matter how many times I replace the bulb. But it was ours. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like home again. Zane fell asleep almost instantly, curled beneath his favorite blanket, the one with the superhero patch that's coming undone at the corners. His chest rose and fell in a rhythm I hadn't seen in months. Peace has a sound. And that night, it sounded like my son breathing easy. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding the journal I hadn't written in since before everything fell apart. I opened it to a blank page and wrote, "He didn't save us with anger. He saved us with the truth." That was all I could get down before my hands started shaking. A week passed. Life didn't become perfect. Bills still came, groceries still cost too much, and some nights I still woke up gasping from dreams I couldn't remember. But the fear was quieter. Then one morning, Zane looked up at me over a bowl of cereal and said, "I think I want to be a lawyer someday." I smiled, tried to play it cool. "Yeah, that sounds like a good job." He shrugged. "They protect people, like they make sure the truth gets heard." And just like that, I had to turn away so he wouldn't see the tears pooling in my eyes. Because there it was, the ripple, the echo of one moment, one brave choice, still unfolding in the small, quiet ways only time can reveal. But even with all that healing, there's something I need to say. To the woman watching this, who knows the weight of being doubted, dismissed, diminished, I see you. To the mother biting her tongue in courtrooms, in kitchens, in late-night texts where her silence keeps the peace, I was you. And to the child still inside some of us, the one who never got the chance to stand up and say, "This is what really happened," I'm sorry. You deserved better. I didn't get to say everything I wanted that day. I didn't get to ask Damien why. I didn't get to tell him that Zane has his eyes. But thank God not his heart. I didn't get to scream or break down, or make him feel even a fraction of what he made me feel for years. But maybe that's okay. Because revenge, real revenge, isn't rage. It's rebuilding. It's sitting in a quiet apartment with your son's laughter bouncing off the walls. It's hearing him sleep without nightmares. It's knowing he'll grow up remembering the day he told the truth and that someone listened. That's what we took back. Not just custody, power, voice, peace. If this story felt like yours, even in the smallest way, I hope you'll stay a little longer. Maybe leave a comment. Maybe hit the like button. Maybe subscribe to Revenge Her Way. Not because I asked you to, but because, maybe like me, you're just trying to feel a little less alone in the quiet after your own storm.